so it's pretty cold and windy outside. There's not a lot to do, so what better to do than to smoke something, right? So a lot of friends have asked me how I do my ribs, and it's pretty simple. Everybody uses it. It's a 3-2-1 method, but I just want to show you how I do it. So I got a nice a rack of baby back ribs here. Got it from a local butcher. It didn't come in one of those packages like you get at the grocery store at Costco. It was actually cut, and which is great because they did me a favor and they took the silver skin off the back. One thing that I look for when I get ribs, and you don't get this if you get the packaged stuff. The packaged stuff is nice, but you tend to get a lot of crooked bones, and you don't want crooked bones. It just makes it harder to cut. So as you can see, my bones are very straight until we get to the end, and they start to get crooked. But if you were doing a competition, which I don't, you'd cut this side off, so you just have these straight bones. But first of all, first things first, you want to wash it, rinse it off, and then you want to cut the silver skin off. The silver skin is the tough membrane on the bottom of the rack. So there's a couple ways you can do it. Most people just take a butter knife or something and stick it up under a bone until they get their finger in there, and then you want to grab a paper towel, grab that silver skin, and it just rips off. The nice thing about this butcher is they've already taken the silver skin off for me, so I don't have to worry about that. That's what I like going there. There's another method that you can do. Some people just score the silver skin, so take a nice sharp knife and make a slit in many different places up and down the rack to get that silver skin slit so that when it cooks, it'll pull back. Because that silver skin will keep your rub and your binder from getting down into the meat. So you want to make sure that you get rid of that silver skin, or at least put some slits in it. So first thing I do is I use yellow mustard as a binder. So a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot of, almost everybody uses mustard as a binder. There's a couple people that hate mustard, so they won't use it as a binder. And I'm telling you right now, I hate mustard. I don't eat mustard, but you can't taste it when you use it this way. Just don't cover it. You just gotta kind of get a thin film. What it does is it helps the rub adhere to the meat. So what I do is I just take a squirt of mustard, shake it there. Just one thin squirt and rub it in just to get a nice thin film. Make sure and get it on the ends too, on the bones. You don't need much more than this. You might want to you can always put a little bit more on to get the ends, because you want to make sure and get the ends to help the rub stick to the ends of the rack as well. So that's all you need. You don't need much more than that. So you got your thin film of mustard. I've got a couple rubs here. I've tried many rubs. I continually use different rubs. I've used Mocaisons. Here I like this Honey Hog Hot. It's Meat Church's. This gives it a little zing, but as you can tell, the color isn't exactly as I like the color. I like a little more reddish color. So I bought this Jack Daniel's pork rub to give it more color. I never tried this. I just bought it at Cabela's yesterday just to try it out. But Meat Church's is probably one of my favorite flavors. So that's gonna be my base. I'm gonna use that first, and then I'm gonna follow up with the Jack Daniel's to give it a little color. So you can be pretty liberal with the rub. Just make sure and cover the bottom. The bottom isn't as important as the top, but I still like to coat both. And don't ever rub, just pat it down so it sticks to the mustard. All right, so that's the Meat Church Honey Hog. Now I'm gonna try the Jack Daniel's. Like I said, this is where I'm gonna get my color. So you can see much brighter reddish color. I hope the flavor is good too. Like I said, I haven't tried it yet, but first time for everything. but I just love how the color comes out on this one. So that's the bottom. Now we'll get the top. So again, you got to start with your layer of mustard. You might need a little bit more to get it all coated, but you don't need to cake it on. You don't need to lather it. Just get a nice thin film. That's all you need is a film across the top, because that'll help the rub stick. So there, so as you can see, it's just a thin coating. I'm not a mustard guy. You cannot taste the mustard, period. I don't care if you say you do, you're lying, because there's no way you taste the mustard. All right, so now I do my meat church. This is where I might put a little bit more on top, but the method I'm gonna use is a 3-2-1. So I've got the smoker going right now on smoke. So hopefully when I get out there, it's around 180 degrees. It'll probably fluctuate between 160 and 190, and that's fine. But I'm gonna do that for 3 hours uncovered. And then the 2 is 2 hours wrapped in foil. And when I wrap it in foil, I'm gonna add some honey, I'm gonna add some brown sugar, a little butter, and I'll wrap it for 2 hours at 225. And then I'll take it off and I will add barbecue sauce, unfoiled, for another 30 minutes to an hour. But that's the meat church, and so now I'm gonna add the Jack Daniel's rub, and man, I already love the color on this. So you don't have to put a ton on right now, because you're really gonna be adding throughout the first 3 hours. So about every, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna take a look and see what it looks like. And I'm not gonna spray it, I'm not gonna spritz, I'm not gonna mop. I'm just gonna add a little bit more rub to make sure that color stays. But this is gorgeous. This is what it should look like before it goes on. Just pat, like I said, don't rub. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna let it sit for about 20 minutes and kind of permeate the meat, just kind of set into the meat a little bit. And in 20 minutes, I'm gonna throw it on smoke for 3 hours, but I'll be back when I put it on. Okay, so I'm back. I'm gonna put the ribs on. I've got my Traeger going. This is the Traeger 22. We're out at the cabin, so I don't need the big one. We just don't entertain a lot of people out here, so don't need a bigger model. At home, I've got the Pro 34, which is a lot bigger, and I get a lot more stuff on it. But for this application at the cabin, this works perfect for us. I've got the smoke going. It's at 167 right now, and like I said, it'll fluctuate because it is windy today. It's chilly, and so the temperature will fluctuate from 155 up to 185, and it'll hang out in between there, which is fine, because all I'm trying to do is get a good smoke into the meat. It just doesn't get cold enough here for me to warrant buying a blanket. A lot of people up north, they buy a blanket to cover and maintain a more constant temperature, but 99% of the days down here in Texas, you just don't need a blanket, so not worth it for me. So, like I said, this is the Traeger 22. I've got pecan pellets going. Pecan's a great flavor for pork, as well as many other things, but a lot of times I'll use a competition blend, so I don't have to change the pellets out. I don't like to change the pellets out that often, so competition blend seems to be the one-stop shop for pellets. But for the Traeger, and I know people out there are true stick burners, great, love you guys. Use your stick burner all you want. That's not me. My boss is a stick burner, and he calls my Traeger a fake news smoker, or sometimes he'll call me up and say, hey, you're putting anything on the crock pot this weekend, you know, but whatever, to each their own. I love it because I don't have to sit and watch it. You set it and forget it. So I'm gonna put these ribs on, like I said, 3 hours on the smoke setting, and then we'll come back in 3 hours and wrap them with some brown sugar and honey and butter. But through the first 3 hours, I'll kind of check on it, maybe every half hour, 45 minutes, and maybe add a little bit more of that Jack Daniel's rub because I love this color. This is a perfect color that I'm going for, so I want to keep that. So let's put the ribs on. The smoke's rolling. So just put them in the center. I know there's hot spots on every grill or smoker, but putting them in the center just works for me. So I'm gonna put them here. They're on, and we'll check back in maybe 45 minutes to see what the color looks like. All right, so it's been about an hour. I'm out here just checking to see the color, see how we're doing. 172, 170, right where we want to be on temp. Just want to show you, I did add this shelf. This is pretty cool on the 22. It's a folding shelf. Makes a world of difference for when you're putting meat on and off. Let's check, see how we're doing. Everything is looking excellent right now. I'm gonna just add a little bit more rub, just a little shake, just to make sure that we keep the color that we want. But otherwise, I'm very pleased so far with the color. It looks pretty good. So just adding a little bit. And I'll probably do this one or two more times throughout the smoke part. But there, just added just a little bit more, just to keep the color going. So I'll be back when it's time to wrap. Okay, so I pulled them off after 2 hours. So they've been smoking now for 3 hours. Excuse me, 3 hours. They've been smoking for 3 hours at 170 to 180. It's got a great smoke built into the meat already. You can see the color looks great, and now I'm gonna wrap them for 2 hours at 225. So I've got the smoker turned up to 225 right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some butter, brown sugar, and some honey on it, wrap it tight, and let it go for 2 hours at 225. So normally I would take some squirt butter over this, but somebody said they couldn't find the squirt butter at the store, so I'm down to just using plain old regular stick butter. So what I do is I'll just put a couple pats of butter on the top and on the bottom. I don't need that much. You don't need a ton of butter. I would just take a squirt butter and squirt one up and down. That just helps keep the meat nice and tender and juicy. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put a couple pats of butter on here first, and then add the rest of the stuff. But this works a whole lot better with squirt butter. I really wish that she could have found the butter. I might put another little pat. So we got the butter going there. Now what I'll do is I'll put some brown sugar. I mean, you know how hard it is to kind of sprinkle. It's clumpy, but if you get any overflow, it'll go into the tin foil wrap, so that's fine. But just get some nice brown sugar. That'll give it some caramelization and a little sweetness to go with my spicy. So you got a little sweet and spicy, and the honey, again, just more of that honey flavor to add a little more sweet. So I'll just zigzag this across. All right, so that's enough for that. So now we flip it over. My butter's gonna fall off because it's not squirt butter. All right, that looks gorgeous right there. So again, butter across the bottom. This is a pretty big rack, so I'm using 3 instead of 2. This is a really nice rack, actually. There's gonna be a lot of meat on here. Again, this is baby back. I normally do the St. Louis. I like the St. Louis style a little bit better. They seem to be more meaty, but this place didn't have the St. Louis, so I had to go with the baby backs. The baby backs are fine. I just like the St. Louis better. So we got our butter. I'm gonna sprinkle on the brown sugar. caramelization, a little sweet to go with the spicy, now the honey. And this will all render down, obviously, as soon as I wrap it and throw it in the smoker. So it's not like you're gonna have big clumps of sugar on your rack. All right, so now the key is making sure that you get a good seal. So I'm gonna double foil it. So you can foil it however you want. There's no real trick, just make sure you get a good seal. I like to put it over, kind of tuck it under a little bit, roll it. And then bring this up. Make sure it's good and sealed. You don't want all your steam and everything coming out. All right, so again, foil over. Nice seal. Tuck this under if you can. Roll it. And then fold it over. Alright, so it's good and sealed. And so now I will put this back onto the smoker for 2 hours, not touching it, not looking at it, not opening it. Let it go for 2 hours, and then we'll come back and do the sauce. So see you in a couple hours. Okay, so I pulled the ribs off after the 2 hours, wrapped at 225. So now I want to get my sauce on there, and then I want to put it back on the smoker for about 30 minutes to an hour. I'm thinking this will probably go another hour, because if you look on the bottom side, which I think these look great so far, you want to look at the bones and you want to see some pullback. So you're seeing some pullback here on one side, so I'll probably turn it around, because like I said earlier, there are hot spots on your grill. So I'd like to see a little more pullback on the short bones here, but so far looking great. So I'm just gonna put some Sweet Baby Ray's on. This is just the regular, I tend to like the spicier one, but I did put that Hot and Honey Meat Church's rub on. So I'm just gonna go with a regular barbecue sauce. I'm gonna wipe my hands off real quick. So I will put these on without any wrap, just the barbecue sauce. I'll probably let them go for about another hour, and I'll put this end on the other side, just because I'd like to see more pullback on the ribs, but these are looking phenomenal, exactly how I want them. So now I'm gonna put some sauce on the bottom. Get the sauce going, rub that in. And this is perfect because I'll put these back on for about an hour, and that'll give me time to do my lobster mac and cheese, and I'll have that in a different video. And we're gonna have some green beans along with that. So green beans and mac and cheese to go with the ribs. So there's the bone side. Now I'll turn it over and put it onto the other side. Again, can be a messy little job here. So add the sauce to this side, and like I said, we're gonna let it go for, typically you need to go 30 minutes to an hour, but I'm gonna probably go with a full hour just to make sure that the sauce sets, and because you really want that sauce to kind of caramelize and give it a nice pretty look on the rib rack. I mean, that's just gorgeous. That turned out so good. Just very happy with how it looks. So got the sauce on there now. So I'm gonna put it back on for about another hour at 225, and that'll give us that 3-2-1 method. Again, it's nothing that I made up. It's everybody, a lot of people use it, 3-2-1. This is just how I do it. So I'm gonna throw this back on for about an hour, and I'm gonna get the lobster mac and cheese going. See you in a little bit. Okay, so I pulled the ribs off after an hour sitting in the sauce. I wanted to make sure and let the sauce really tighten up. That's the goal with ribs. And while I've got the mac and cheese going, mac and cheese is in the oven, I'm gonna turn these ribs over so that they're easier to cut. You can see from this side, from this side, from this side, how the bones are really starting to pull away from the meat. I probably could have let them go another 15 to 30 minutes, but the mac and cheese is on, the green beans are on, we're ready to eat. So I'm gonna turn this over. And as I mentioned earlier, the straight bones are just so much easier to cut. When you get down to the end, it's gonna be a little more crooked, but I'm just gonna start from this end and cut, because actually I'm gonna start from this end. You wanna make sure you get straight bones. That's the hardest part with ribs is cutting to make them look pretty. So, actually start this. The first bone in is always tough. Yeah, this little chine bone here. So actually let's start on this end. Yeah, the crooked bones are a little tougher to cut. They don't come out as pretty, but you can see ribs are always hard to cut. Unless you have that straight bone. There's another one. There's one. So you can see how juicy they are. Got a nice smoke ring on them. Trying the crooked ones are tough. There you go. That's a good one. So there's a good one. There's another good one. So I just started at the wrong end. So that looks good. Crooked always makes it a challenge. You always try to find straight bones when you're shopping for ribs. You can see just how easy that cuts, how juicy they are. I'm still working at a little bit of an angle, but boy, that looks awesome. Came out just the way I wanted. You see how easy they cut, as long as you find the right angle. So that's what we're gonna be eating tonight. We're gonna be eating these ribs, and we've got some lobster mac and cheese. So hopefully this video helps you if you guys wanna make some ribs. And once you get down towards the end, it gets a little tougher because there's an extra little side bone here. I don't know if they call that the chine bone or what they call that, but it makes it a little harder to cut down towards the end. But I think we're gonna enjoy some good ribs tonight.